Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen with some more dev responses. Today we are looking at some of the deeper information and follow-up questions to the missile and countermeasure changes that are coming in Alpha 3.11, as well as what's going on with ground buoyancy features, and that are all, again, coming with that patch. There were a lot of follow-up questions to the 3.11 missile and countermeasures thread and changes post, so let's start with the biggest new answer we have there, with the poster saying the missile changes were very problematic in their opinion. EVOCATI went over some of the various changes with a bit more context. 1. The 1 lock per rack limitation for missiles. This is just a temporary measure, which has more to do with the limitations on certain missile racks. Not all of them can launch multiple missiles at the same time. We absolutely want to give players the ability to launch big salvos, but we also think that this process might come at a bigger price than just smashing the same button 20 times. Changes in this regard will happen with missile operator mode in 2021. Until then, we are likely to keep the 1 lock per rack limitation. I understand that this will change the combat experience for missile boat loadouts, but please keep in mind that they still have a lot of missiles and locking a target doesn't take long. 2. The total 4 lock limitation. The max amount of missile launches that your ship can handle will ultimately be driven from the ship avionics in a later version of the game. In 3.11, however, it will be a static number. It is 4 at the moment, but depending on how the ETF, EVOCATI test flight, feedback looks, we'll change it. 3. Attrition war. We hope there are enough dynamic gameplay elements to avoid an attrition war. Timing for deploying countermeasures is a very important factor, and there are likely to be a couple of factors when you play together with your friends, as your own countermeasures are also affecting missiles, which are not meant for you. In fact, you can even spoof your own missiles with your own countermeasures if you're not careful. That said, during the ETF and PTU phases, we'll be very focused on feedback threads and trying to get the right amount of available countermeasures for each ship. 4. Persistence of knowledge. It really just means that missiles don't know at all times where their target is. All missiles have seeker heads with varying fields of vision, but they can't look directly backwards anymore, so you have a high chance that they can't reacquire a lock on you after the first pass. 5. Locking and relocking. In the long term, we're trying to go into a direction where missiles are not just additional weapons during dogfights. We want them instead to be a proper slot in the combat space and have areas where they are useful and areas where they are not useful. So if you find a missile hard to employ in knife fighting distances, then it's not necessarily a bad thing. Ultimately, please keep in mind that this announcement is really just for the 3.11 changes. Missile gameplay is not done with in 3.11, and far bigger changes will appear with the missile operator mode in 2021. Hope that makes sense. So there was a load of follow-up questions as well here. Is this a big nerf for missile boats and the Shrike that's just about to come out in 3.12? A lot more things concerning missiles will change with the missile overhaul and the operator mode, missile salvos, etc. next year. Don't worry, the Shrike will have its place in the combat environment and will perform well in its intended specialization. With the noise fields, does this mean we can use countermeasures to defeat radar locks, scanning, or auto gimbal and pip tracking? Yes, things inside noise fields effectively get a reduced signal, so you can use them to break locks. Though being inside a noise field does also mean your own sensors are strongly affected. Very big ships might still be on your radar, smaller ones might disappear. In the future, after 3.11, also the actual use of a countermeasure will block line of sight, rather than just things in it. If the missile dives into a noise field, only its signature readouts will be affected, but it won't explode. That means that there is a high chance it will lose its target track, but it will keep on going. If it comes out of the noise field, and then it will function normally again, and yes, if there happens to be an object in the way, then it will be subject to the missile's warhead. Any chance this change to missile locking mechanics will fix Constellation missile locking? So they haven't had time to address the Constellation and its offset missiles yet, so at this time the locking process is still based on the forward direction of the armed missiles locking cone. The current plan is to fix that with the missile operator mode in 2021, so it will get addressed, but not in 3.11. What about torpedoes? They are absolutely going to have deeper gameplay when it comes to torpedoes beyond what they've talked about, and have a couple of plans laid out of the scope of 3.11 though. Some other nuggets of information here. They are actively discussing some easier ways to target incoming missiles. There was a suggestion of having undetonated ordnance that could be then recovered as part of the salvaging sort of mechanics, and they're going to be looking into that. Also a suggestion of having countermeasures as part of some turret loadouts. or even some deployable mines that will make use of countermeasures. They're going to be discussing that internally. They want more reliance on the launch platform, not just the missile, for when they add the missile operator mode in 2021. They haven't decided 100% on the names of countermeasures. Decoy and noise field may just be short-term working titles. Macro use is against terms of service, so they suggest you don't use them to try and avoid missiles or spam countermeasures or whatever. Buoyancy and Crusader. So there was a thread here, and we know that there are more additions to 3.11 alpha with seaweeds and other ground cover elements on water, simulating buoyancy, floating, and reacting realistically to water waves to further enhance the visuals of water on planets. This is known as ground cover buoyancy, and there was some questions on this. Is the buoyancy tech coming in 3.11 necessary for buoyance of other objects on water and liquids? Will buoyancy physics eventually be simulated on all objects? Will buoyancy physics be applied to dense atmospheres such as a gas giant or Venus-like planets? Is the buoyancy tech coming in 3.11 necessary for buoyancy of objects in a gas giant as well? A new poster from Cloud Imperium. Figwig answered, I developed the ground cover buoyancy feature that you see on the roadmap, and I've been wanting to clear this up for a while as there seems to be some confusion around it here and on Reddit. The feature you see on the roadmap is not physics-based. It is, in fact, a shader effect where a flattish mesh can be deformed in order to conform to the waves on the ocean below and above it. Essentially, it reads the ocean's displacement map and mimics that. There's also a version of it where whole meshes, like ice chunks, can appear to float rather than deforming like seaweed, but it's all entirely shader-based and relies on ocean tech to work. As for a physics-based approach, we also have physically based buoyancy in Engine. This wasn't me, but a couple of other features I've been working on have used physical buoyancy. I'm not the best person to answer whether our physics-based approach will work in gas giants, but I'd assume not. Our current buoyancy model is based on a fixed level, ocean level, rather than atmospheric buoyancy, and while in real life physics fluid buoyancy covers liquids and gases, their effects are so different that it would likely be simulated differently in the code. There was also a follow-up question. So if I'm reading this right, your work is for making static assets look like they're physically interacting with the water for performance, is my guess, whilst another team is creating a system for physical items to interact with water, as I've noticed that the ragdoll of a player model does float in certain cases. As far as I know, yes, physical buoyancy is working in the live build. There's just not that many things that a player can throw in the water and see it float. Most of them won't be buoyant, never mind the fact that you'd die if you go into the water. It's an insta-kill right now once you get to a certain level. The reason my tech is shader-based is because what we call ground cover, so grass, seaweed, very small rocks, is simply not included in the physics simulation. The tech is also based on deformation, so yeah, I guess simulating this physically would require soft body physics simulation, which is very expensive, and in this case would be a waste of resources. There was also a question on the extent of development on water physics and simulation. In terms of long-term goals, we'd love to develop the water further. I've personally worked on the oceans from quite a few angles, and I know there are a few more changes planned. The thing about fluid simulation for oceans is it's very expensive. A really good fluid simulation can take as much GPU processing as rendering a whole game. We'd also need to dynamically switch between our existing ocean simulation and the fluid simulation. We can't do physical fluid simulation for an entire planet simultaneously. We'd want it local to the player. I'd definitely be excited for this, but it's not currently planned. But as I said, there's more work with oceans with every patch. I know that there are at least 2 water-related shader changes I've added coming this patch. And that's it for today's dev response, but what do you think? Are you going to be trying to float things in Alpha 3.11 and going to see what looks prettier about the water? Are you happy with the missile changes in 3.11? Does it go too far or not too far enough? Whatever your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What am I shilling for today, I hear you ask? Do you hate it when people steal all of your money and your house over the internet? I know I do. NordVPN may have been invented by wizards to help protect your personal data from the prying eyes of the dark web, a sinister cabal of technomancers that grow in power the more they know about your browsing habits. The true story of NordVPN's origins are unknown and lost to the ages, and without using facts, no one really knows how it provides more accessibility to otherwise censored websites or a safer security experience for all that use it. All I know is that it does, and that when you sign up to it, the power level of my bank account grows, and I use it And maybe you should too. Every month we have a giveaway for a Star Citizen ship. For this month of September, it's for the Talon Light Fighter, the Battlebird Glass Cannon. Just comment on any of my videos made during September 2020 to be in for a chance of winning that. That ship should be flyable by the end of the year. If you'd like to further support the channel, there is Patreon or YouTube channel memberships via the join button down below. That will net you some exclusive content each month, but sharing videos, liking, subscribing, dinging the bell, as well as commenting and giving feedback really does help the channel to grow and give me an idea of what you guys want. Thanks very much for watching. You take care, and I'll see you in the verse.